Welcome to the deep dive, everybody. Ready to dive into effective learning today?
Always ready.
We're focusing on the slipbox method.
Ah, yes, the slip box.
Heard of it?
Absolutely. It's like a productivity hack, but for your brain.
Love that. And we'll be using Sönke Ahrens' book, How to Take Smart Notes,
Great book.
to guide us. I've got expert speaker here to help us break it all down.
Happy to be here. I'm really excited to dig into this.
Me too.
Yeah.
You know, the slipbox, it's not just about, taking notes, right?
Oh, not at all. It's a whole different way of thinking about research and writing, too.
That's what really got me interested. I've always struggled with traditional note-taking.
Oh, yeah, I know that feeling.
You know, I'd always felt like just copying information, not really engaging with it.
I get it.
But this slipbox thing, it seems different, right?
Definitely.
The book really pushes this idea that writing, the act of writing, is like the core of learning.
Oh, absolutely.
Research, and even thinking itself.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's a whole new way of looking at things, a shift in perspective, you know?
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think when you actually write something down, you're not just passively reading, you're processing it.
Right.
You're making those connections.
You're forced to engage, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're forming your own understanding of the material.
It's almost like you're having a conversation with it, you know? You're challenging it, questioning it,
I like that. A conversation, yeah.
and trying to figure out how it fits into your own view of the world.
Absolutely. And putting your thoughts into words, that forces you to get clear on your thinking,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
to make those connections explicit.
That's powerful. There's also this point Ahrens makes about writing. He says it's like a public claim on truth as soon as you share it.
I like that.
It really made me think,
Yeah, that's a good one.
because I hadn't thought about it that way before.
You know, it really emphasizes the responsibility we have when we write, because when you put something in writing, you're saying, this is what I believe,
Right.
and I'm willing to stand behind it.
It definitely raises the stakes.
It does.
It makes you think more carefully about your arguments, right?
For sure, for sure.
Like, what evidence do you have? And even the impact your words might have.
Oh, absolutely. And the slipbox method, it's built to encourage that kind of careful thought.
Okay. I like
Because you're always connecting notes, testing your ideas,
that. Right.
looking at things from different angles.
So let's talk about the slipbox itself.
Okay, let's dive in.
Because from what I've read, it seems surprisingly simple.
It is.
Almost too simple, to be honest. Can something this basic actually work?
Well, that's the beauty of it.
Okay, tell me more.
It's like the shipping container.
What?
Yeah, a simple idea that completely changed, global trade.
Okay, I can see it. So we're not talking about fancy software
No,
or algorithms or anything.
Nope. Just some basic tools and a clear understanding of how it works.
I love that analogy.
It helps to picture it, right?
Yeah, because it shows how something simple can make a huge impact.
Exactly. And just like those containers, the slipbox, it helps us avoid
Avoid what?
the pitfalls of traditional note-taking, all those notebooks filled with scribbles that just gathered dust,
Tell me about it.
Yeah, we've all been there.
I've got tons of those. So the slipbox, it streamlines everything.
It does.
Makes it easier to actually use your notes.
Yes, and to turn them into something valuable.
Okay, I'm liking this more and more.
Good.
Yeah.
Now, at the heart of this method, there are 4 key principles.
Okay, let's break those down.
All right.
Because I think those are really important to understanding how the whole system works.
Absolutely. The first one is this. Writing is the only thing that matters.
Interesting.
Now, don't get me wrong, reading and research are still important.
Right, of course.
But the emphasis here is that writing is the central activity. It's what drives your learning, your knowledge creation.
So it's not enough to just passively absorb it?
No, you have to engage with it.
And writing is the way to do that.
Exactly. Principle number 2. Simplicity is paramount.
I like that. Keep it simple.
That's the idea. The system is designed to be easy to use and easy to maintain.
Right, otherwise it'll just be another chore.
Exactly. And the third principle. Nobody ever starts from scratch.
That's true.
We all build our knowledge on what's already out there.
Right.
And the slipbox, it helps you leverage those connections to make new discoveries.
So you're not reinventing the wheel every time you start something new.
Exactly. You're building on what you've already done.
I like that.
Good. And finally, number 4, let the work carry you forward.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means the system is designed to help ideas flow naturally.
I see.
You follow your curiosity and you build momentum in your thinking.
So you're not forcing yourself to be productive. You're setting up a system where it just happens.
Yeah, think of it like creating the perfect environment for your thoughts to grow.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all these principles come together.
Yeah.
It feels effortless and, like, powerful at the same time.
That's the goal.
You're not forcing it, you're just letting it happen.
Exactly. It's about setting up the right conditions for success.
Now, Ahrens also lays out 6 specific steps
Oh, yeah,
for successful writing with the slipbox method.
they're important.
It's like a step-by-step guide, almost like a recipe, you know?
I like that analogy, a recipe for good writing.
Yeah, for turning your notes into a delicious intellectual meal.
And just like cooking, each step builds on the last one, making something more complex as you go.
Exactly. So the first step is what he calls fleeting notes.
Ah, yes, the fleeting notes.
These are those quick little notes you jot down.
Yeah, right.
Just to make sure you don't lose an idea.
Think of it like a safety net for your thoughts.
Oh, I like that.
You don't have to get the wording perfect at this stage, just get it down.
Yeah, before you forget.
Exactly. Because let's be real, our brains aren't always reliable.
That's for sure.
So write it down.
Yeah.
Then we move on to literature notes,
Literature notes, okay?
where you're summarizing the key points from your reading.
Got it.
But the focus is always on how it relates to your own work.
So you're not just passively highlighting.
No.
You're thinking about how it fits into your own research.
Exactly. And this is where those fleeting notes can come in handy.
Oh, how so?
They can spark connections, things you might not have noticed otherwise.
It's like a bridge between your first impressions and then your deeper analysis.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
Okay, and then what? What's the next step?
Permanent notes. This is where the magic really starts.
Okay, I'm intrigued. This feels like where we move from just collecting information to actually creating something.
Yes, exactly. You're taking those fleeting notes, those literature notes, and you're transforming them
Into what?
into the building blocks of your slipbox.
Interesting. So you're not just summarizing what you've read anymore. You're creating something new.
You got it. It's a creative process.
And this is where the slipbox starts to become more than just notes.
Yes, it starts to become a network of ideas.
Okay, that's fascinating.
Right. It all starts coming together.
Yeah, I'm starting to get it.
So what's next? Well, the next step is to connect your notes.
Connect the notes, okay?
This is where you start to see that web of ideas forming.
How do you do that?
You link notes together based on shared themes, arguments, even contradictions.
So you're not just filing them away in isolation?
No, you're creating a web of relationships.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's much more organic, more dynamic than just folders and categories.
It's kind of like those old mind maps, but way more complex.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
Okay, so what's the next step in this process?
The next step is crucial, and it's often overlooked.
Okay, tell me.
You have to think about the notes as you write them.
Not just summarize them.
No, you're reflecting on them. You're questioning them.
You're going deeper.
Exactly. You're pushing your thinking further.
It's like you're having a conversation with your notes.
That's a great way to put it. A back and forth to see what new ideas come out.
So it's not just about transcribing, it's about actively engaging.
Exactly. That's where the real learning happens.
Makes sense.
And finally, we come to the culmination of all this work.
Okay, what's that?
You develop ideas, turn them into drafts, and revise.
So this is where the rubber meets the road.
Yes, the slipbox provides the foundation, but you have to build on that.
Right, to shape it into a finished piece.
Exactly. Think of it like having all the ingredients, but you still need to know how to cook.
I love that analogy. You have to combine the ingredients, create a dish that's more than just the sum of its parts.
Precisely. And what's great about the slipbox is that you're not starting from scratch.
Oh, right, you have all these ideas already there.
Yeah, ready to be woven into something new.
And it gets better over time, right? The more notes you add, the more connections you make.
Absolutely. It's a system that grows with you.
I'm really starting to see the potential here.
Good, I'm glad. Now, before we move on, I want to touch on something that really resonated with me.
Okay, what's that?
This whole idea of multitasking.
Oh, multitasking. I'm a chronic multitasker.
Me too. But the research shows that it's not as productive as we think.
Really?
Yeah, it actually reduces our productivity and makes it harder to focus.
Like trying to juggle too many things at once.
Exactly. You might look impressive for a second, but then you drop everything.
Uh-huh. That's a good way to put it.
And what's interesting is that it actually makes us worse at handling multiple tasks.
You're kidding?
Nope, it's like we're training our brains to be distracted.
Oh, that's scary.
It is, but here's the good news. The slipbox method encourages you to focus on one thing at a time.
Okay, I like that.
It leads to better quality work.
So it's like each step is separate.
Exactly. Fleeting notes, then move on. Literature notes, then file them away.
So you can really immerse yourself in each task.
Yes, it's like a form of intellectual mindfulness.
I love that.
So you're training your brain to focus, to go deep, and to produce better work.
And that leads to a more satisfying experience?
It does. You feel a sense of accomplishment. You see real progress.
It's a positive cycle.
It is. Focus leads to better work, which leads to a sense of accomplishment, which leads to more focus.
This is great. Now, this ties into another concept, the growth mindset.
Ah, yes, the growth mindset.
You know, the idea that we should actively seek feedback and see challenges as opportunities.
It's essential for continuous learning.
It's about embracing the fact that we're all works in progress.
Absolutely, we're always learning and growing.
So how does this connect to the slipbox method?
Well, the slip box encourages this mindset in a few ways. First, it forces you to confront your limitations.
Okay, that sounds tough.
It can be, but it's ultimately empowering. You start to see how much you don't know.
So it's humbling, but also exciting because it means there's so much more to learn.
Exactly. It shifts the focus from proving yourself to embracing the learning process.
I like that.
And second, the slip box provides a safe space to experiment.
Oh, that's important.
It is. You can test ideas, make connections without the fear of judgment.
Like having a private lab for your thoughts.
Exactly. And third, the slip box encourages you to share your work and get feedback.
So you're opening yourself up to new perspectives.
Yes, you're challenging your own assumptions, refining your thinking.
This is powerful stuff.
It is. It's about becoming a better learner and thinker.
And that can impact all areas of our lives, not just writing.
Exactly. It's about a mindset of continuous growth.
Okay, before we get too philosophical here,
Sure.
I want to bring up something more practical from the book.
Okay, what's that?
The power of handwriting.
Oh, interesting.
In our digital world, it seems almost old-fashioned, right?
It does. But the research suggests there's something special about putting pen to paper.
Really?
Yeah, it actually helps us understand and remember things better.
I'm surprised by that. Typing is so much faster.
It is, but there's something about the slower, less editable nature of handwriting.
I see. So you have to process the information more deeply.
Exactly. Think of it like the difference between taking a photo and sketching a scene.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
With a photo, you capture everything instantly, but with a sketch, you have to slow down.
You have to observe, yeah.
Exactly. You have to make choices about what to include.
So that process of thinking and choosing actually helps us learn.
It does. It forces your brain to engage more actively.
I'm going to have to try that.
You should. See what difference it makes.
Okay, shifting gears a bit here. Let's talk about confirmation bias.
Ah, yes. Confirmation bias.
That sneaky tendency we all have to look for information that confirms what we already believe.
It's one of the biggest obstacles to objective thinking.
It's like we're building echo chambers for our own beliefs.
Exactly. And that can be dangerous, especially when we're trying to learn and research.
So how do we combat that?
The book gives a great example. Charles Darwin.
Charles Darwin, okay.
He actually forced himself to write down arguments against his own theories.
Wow, that's impressive.
It is. He knew how easily our minds can slip into confirmation bias.
So he created a system to fight it.
Exactly. It's like actively challenging your own assumptions.
It reminds me of that saying, the best way to strengthen your argument is to understand the opposing view.
It's a powerful strategy, and the slip box method actually helps with this too.
Oh, really? How so?
It encourages you to collect diverse information, whether it supports your argument or not.
You're not just building a case for one side.
No, you're creating a network of ideas that can be used to explore multiple perspectives.
It's a more holistic approach to knowledge.
Exactly. It fosters intellectual humility, recognizing that you don't have all the answers.
And that's a good thing, right? Because it keeps us open to learning.
Absolutely. Speaking of learning, I want to bring up a concept that ties into the slip box.
Okay, what's that?
It's Charlie Munger's idea of a lattice work of mental models.
Lattice work of mental models. I've heard of mental models.
Yeah, but a lattice work of them.
What does that mean?
It means developing a broad toolbox of concepts and frameworks from different fields.
Okay, so not just one narrow way of thinking.
No, you want a diverse set of tools to help you understand the world.
It's like having a Swiss Army knife of thinking tools.
I love that analogy.
You can choose the right tool for the job, depending on the situation.
Exactly. So how does the slip box help us with this?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
The slip box encourages you to connect ideas from different fields.
Okay, so you're seeing how things relate to each other.
Yes, and you're building a more complete understanding of complex topics.
It's like weaving together threads of knowledge from different disciplines.
I love that image. You're creating a tapestry of understanding.
It's much richer than any single thread could provide on its own.
Exactly. And Munger, he has this great quote about it.
Oh yeah, what does he say?
He says, and I'm paraphrasing here, that you can't really know anything if you just remember isolated facts.
Interesting.
If they don't connect to a theory, a model, you can't use them.
It's like having a toolbox full of tools, but not knowing how to use them.
That's a good analogy. And the slip box, it's like it helps you organize those tools.
You understand their function, how to use them.
Precisely. So you're not just accumulating knowledge.
You're developing wisdom.
You got it.
Yeah.
That ability to use knowledge to solve problems.
This is great stuff.
It is. Now, another exciting aspect is that the slip box can actually be a creativity machine.
A creativity machine. Tell me more.
We tend to think of creativity as this spontaneous thing, right?
Yeah, like a light bulb moment.
Right. But the slip box suggests that you can cultivate creativity.
So no more eureka moments.
Well, those still happen, but real insight usually comes from long periods of thinking.
It's about those slow hunches that develop over time.
Exactly. And the slip box provides the perfect environment for that.
It's a space where ideas can mix and mingle, where those unexpected sparks can happen.
Exactly. And the best part, the slip box does the heavy lifting.
What do you mean?
It keeps track of all those ideas, all those connections, so your mind is free to explore.
It's like you're setting the stage for those creative breakthroughs.
You provide the fuel, the slip box provides the engine.
I love that. So instead of brainstorming, we're slipbox storming.
Haha, exactly. It's a much more focused and productive way to generate ideas.
Okay, so how does this slipbox storming work?
You start with a specific note or a group of notes that you want to explore.
Right.
Then you open your slip box and start browsing, looking for connections, anything that sparks your interest.
Like a treasure hunt through your notes.
Yeah. And as you browse, you write down new notes, capturing any thoughts or questions that come up.
You're not censoring yourself, you're just letting the ideas flow.
Exactly. And you link those new notes back to the original ones.
So you're building this web of interconnected ideas.
That's the idea. It's a great way to overcome writer's block or to break out of those old thinking patterns.
So it's more structured than just sitting and waiting for inspiration.
It is. Now, one thing I want to clear up is that this isn't just for academic writing.
Oh, really?
Nope, the slip box can be used for any kind of writing.
Fiction, nonfiction, even journaling.
Absolutely. Because at its core, the slip box is a tool for thinking.
And thinking is essential for any kind of writing.
Exactly. Whether it's a novel, a blog post, whatever.
The Flipbox can help you generate ideas, organize your thoughts.
Yes, and create more insightful and engaging work.
I'm really starting to see the appeal of that.
Good. It's not just about organizing information, it's about transforming the way you think.
And how you learn and create.
Absolutely. It's a holistic system for your intellectual life.
Now, in the next part of our deep dive,
Yes.
we're going to get into the practicalities of turning those notes into a manuscript.
The nuts and bolts.
Exactly. How do we go from those scattered ideas to a finished piece of writing?
I'm looking forward to that.
But for now, we're going to take a quick break. Stay with us.
We'll be right back. Welcome back. So, we've talked about setting up the slip box.
Right, all those notes and connections.
Now, the big question, how do we actually use it to write a manuscript?
Yeah, that's the part I'm still wrapping my head around.
It can seem like magic, right? Going from random notes to a finished piece.
A little bit. Like, how do those notes actually become a coherent story?
It's not magic, but the slip box does provide a framework.
Okay, that makes sense.
Remember, the whole point is to streamline your work towards, producing something you can publish.
Right, to get those insights out there.
Exactly. So how do we bridge that gap between notes and manuscript? One key thing Ahrens talks about is the desktop.
The desktop, like on a computer.
No, not that kind of desktop. It's a dedicated space, but for your project notes.
Oh, I see. So it's like a separate workspace where you bring together the relevant notes for what you're currently working on.
You got it. You pull in notes from your slip box, you arrange them logically,
Right.
and you start to see the structure of your argument emerge.
So you're not starting with a rigid outline and trying to make the notes fit. That's always been my struggle.
Right, that can feel too restrictive. The slip box process is much more iterative,
Okay, so more flexible.
Exactly. You let the connections between the notes guide you.
So the outline kind of builds itself.
In a way, yes. It emerges organically from the connections you've already made.
That sounds much more like how my brain works.
Right. It's about finding that balance between structure and freedom.
Yeah, I can see that.
Too much structure and you stifle creativity, but too little and you get lost.
Exactly. But let's get specific here. How do you actually turn those notes into a manuscript? What's the secret?
Well, the secret is to think of it as storytelling. You're weaving those notes into a narrative.
A story that engages the reader and gets your point across.
Exactly. Like, imagine you have a pile of building blocks.
Okay, I can picture that.
You have all the pieces, but it's up to you to build something with them.
To create a structure.
Yes, a
Right.
structure that's both beautiful and functional.
I like that. But with so many notes, so many building blocks, where do you even start?
You start by thinking about the flow, the transitions, the pacing of the whole piece.
So you're not just copying and pasting notes into a document.
No, you have to rephrase them, elaborate on them.
Connect them in a way that makes sense for the reader.
Exactly. It's like taking a series of snapshots and turning them into a movie.
You have to add the movement, the transitions, the emotional impact.
Yes. And throughout this process, the slip box is still there.
Okay, so it's still guiding you.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
your source of material, your inspiration.
You're not starting from scratch.
Never. You have this wealth of knowledge to draw from.
Okay, so it's like a scaffolding for the writing process.
That's a great way to put it. Are there specific features of the slip box that help with this?
Absolutely. One that's really useful is creating note sequences.
Note sequences, what are those?
It's like creating a chain of notes, linking them together in a specific order.
So you can see the flow of your ideas.
Exactly. You see how one thought leads to the next, and you can spot any gaps in your reasoning.
It's like laying out stepping stones across a river. I like that. You can see the path and you can adjust it as you go.
And how are these sequences different from traditional outlines?
They're much more flexible. Traditional outlines can be too rigid.
Right, they lock you into a structure.
Note sequences are more fluid. They allow for that natural evolution of your thinking.
So you're not forcing your ideas into a preset structure.
No, the structure comes from the connections you've already made in your slip box.
That's really interesting. It's a much more organic way of working.
And it leads to a more natural flow in your writing.
It makes sense. It's all connected.
Exactly. Another important point Ahrens makes is this. Writing is a process of discovery.
Oh, I definitely agree with that.
You don't always know what you think until you start writing.
It happens to me all the time. I
Hmm.
start with one idea and it ends up completely different.
That's the beauty of it. And the slip box supports that process.
How so?
It's a space to play with ideas, to test things out.
You can be wrong, you can revise.
Exactly. You're not bound by that initial plan. You can adjust as you learn.
It takes the pressure off, that's for sure.
It does. Think of writing as a conversation, not a presentation.
You know, I like that.
You're in dialogue with your notes, with your sources, with your own understanding.
You're constantly refining your thinking as you go.
Exactly. Now, I know a lot of writers struggle with feeling overwhelmed.
Oh, tell me about it. Too many ideas, too much information. It's paralyzing.
It can be, but the slip box can actually help with that.
Really? How? I'd think it would make it worse.
It's about providing structure, a way to contain all that information.
So it's like a filing system for your thoughts.
Exactly. You can sort them, categorize them, and you don't have to remember everything.
That's a huge relief. It's like having an assistant to keep track of all the details.
It frees up your mental energy to focus on the bigger picture.
To think more clearly.
Yes, the slip box lets you break the process down into smaller steps.
You're not drowning in information.
Right, you can focus on one note, one connection, one idea at a time.
So it's like decluttering your mind, making space for new ideas.
Exactly. It's a powerful way to manage information overload.
So you're not just writing more efficiently, you're thinking better.
That's the goal. And remember that slip box storming technique we talked about.
Right, the alternative to brainstorming.
It's especially helpful when you're feeling stuck or overwhelmed.
That helps generate those new ideas.
Yes, ideas that are relevant to your work.
So how do we do it again?
You pick a note or a group of notes.
Okay.
Then you browse through your slip box looking for connections, anything that sparks your interest.
Like a treasure hunt.
It is. And as you browse, you write down new notes.
Capturing those new thoughts and questions.
Exactly. And then you link those back to the original notes.
Building that web of ideas.
Exactly. It's great for overcoming writer's block, for getting those creative juices flowing.
It sounds much more focused than just waiting for inspiration.
It is. Now, one last thing I want to address.
Sure.
Some people think the slip box is only for academic writing,
I kind of thought that too.
but that's not true. It can be used for any type of writing.
Fiction, nonfiction.
Anything. Because it's a tool for thinking, and all writing requires thinking.
That's a good point.
Whether it's a novel, a blog post, even a journal entry.
It can help us be more creative and insightful.
Exactly. It's about enhancing your process, no matter what you're writing.
Okay, I'm convinced. But I have to be honest, one concern I have.
What's that?
It all seems like a lot of work.
Yeah.
I'm already so busy.
I hear you. It can seem daunting, but the work is front-loaded.
What does that mean?
It means you put in the effort up front, building your slip box, making connections.
Okay.
But once you have that foundation, the writing becomes so much easier.
So it's like an investment.
Exactly. Think of it like a well-stocked pantry.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
You spend time gathering the ingredients, organizing them.
But then when you need to cook, everything is right there.
Exactly. You don't have to start from scratch every time.
So the slip box is like our intellectual pantry.
I love that. It's a resource you can draw on again and again.
And in the long run, it saves us time, right?
Right.
Because we're not constantly trying to remember everything.
Precisely. You're leveraging your past efforts, building on what you've already learned.
So it's a virtuous cycle.
It is. It takes effort, but the payoff is huge.
It's an investment in our future selves.
Exactly. If you're willing to put in the work, the slip box can transform your writing, your thinking, your whole intellectual life.
Okay, I'm sold. Now, in our final segment, we're going to explore how this method can make us better learners and thinkers overall.
It's not just about writing, it's about how we engage with the world.
I'm excited to hear more about that. Stay tuned. We're back for the final part of our deep dive. This time we're looking at how the slipbox helps us become better learners, better thinkers.
Yeah.
Beyond just the writing aspect.
Yeah, it's about more than just getting words on a page. It really changes how you approach knowledge.
It's like shifting from project mode to lifelong learning mode, right?
Exactly. You're not just cramming for a deadline anymore. You're building a system for continuous growth.
I struggle with that. It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and lose sight of the big picture.
That's a common challenge for sure. We're constantly bombarded with information. It's hard to make time for real learning.
But with the Slipbox, you're building a framework. You can actually connect the dots,
That's it. It's about becoming an expert in your field, but not just through memorizing facts.
It's about understanding those connections, those different perspectives.
And always being willing to ask new questions. That's key.
It's like you're making a map of your field, a mental map, and you can keep adding to it, refining it as you learn.
I like that analogy. The slip box becomes a tool to feed that curiosity. You follow those interesting threads, those ideas that really grab you, and you make those discoveries.
It's like giving yourself permission to be that lifelong learner.
Exactly. And one of the things that makes it so powerful for learning is that it takes the pressure off your memory.
Yeah, that's a big one for me. I can't remember everything.
You don't have to. That's the point. You offload that burden onto the system.
It's like having an external hard drive for your brain.
Right.
You can store all that info, all those connections, and access them when you need them.
It frees up your mental space for actually thinking.
So you can think more clearly, make connections more easily. You can see the bigger picture without getting bogged down in the detail.
Precisely. You're not just remembering more, you're thinking more effectively.
This is great. It's
Yeah.
about leveraging the system so your brain can do what it does best.
Absolutely. The slip box also encourages what we call deliberate practice. That's crucial for developing expertise.
Deliberate practice. I've heard the term, but what does that actually mean?
It means being intentional about your learning. You're not just passively absorbing stuff. You're actively engaging with it.
You're summarizing, connecting it to other ideas, testing yourself to see if you really understand.
Right. You're pushing yourself beyond what's comfortable, looking for those weak spots, and then focusing on improving them.
So it's not just about time spent. It's about focused effort, really working on those skills.
That's it. And the slip box is perfect for this. You're taking those smart notes, you're constantly reviewing, revising. That's the kind of active learning that leads to real expertise.
It's like turning learning into a challenge, almost like a game you want to win.
I like that. You see the progress as your slip box grows too.
And that brings us back to that growth mindset, right?
It all ties together. The slip box helps you see challenges as opportunities,
Yeah.
You're less afraid of making mistakes.
You're not saying I'm not good at this. You're saying I'm learning.
Exactly. It creates a safe space to experiment, to try things out, and maybe even get things wrong. That's part of the process.
It's about embracing that messiness, knowing that mistakes are how we learn.
And as your slip box grows, you gain confidence. You see that you're capable of learning, adapting, understanding more complex ideas.
It's almost like a visual representation of that growth, right?
Mm.
All those notes, all those connections, they're proof that you're putting in the work.
Now, here's something else that's interesting. The slip box helps you embrace those moments of, well, of happy accidents in learning.
Those unexpected connections when things suddenly click into place.
Exactly. We can't plan for those, but the slip box creates the conditions where they're more likely to happen.
I've definitely had that experience where I'm looking through my notes and I stumble upon something I'd completely forgotten. Suddenly a new connection appears.
It's like those ideas are just waiting to be discovered, waiting to be linked together.
So it's not just about being organized, it's also about being open to those unexpected insights, those aha moments.
The slip box helps you find that balance.
Yes.
Structure and serendipity, working hard but also playing with ideas, being intentional but open to new possibilities.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the slipbox method, I think it's important to say that this isn't some quick fix.
It's not. It takes effort. It takes discipline, and it takes a willingness to, well, to change how you approach thinking and working.
It's commitment to lifelong learning, right? To always be curious, always be growing.
And the rewards are huge. You become a better learner, a better thinker, a better writer.
It's a tool that can really change how you engage with the world and ultimately lead to a more fulfilling life.
Couldn't have said it better myself. If you're ready for that challenge, that journey of intellectual discovery, then give the slip box a try.
Grab a notebook, start taking those smart notes, and see what you discover, not only about the world, but about yourself.
And that wraps up this episode of The Deep Dive. We hope you enjoyed exploring the slip box with us.
Remember, learning is a journey, so keep exploring, keep connecting, keep diving deep.